¿Y cuándo viste eso?
Recording in progress.
Okay. No, yo fui a, no sé.
Should we get started?
Exactly.
Started. Welcome to the Lasses Lunchtime Lecture. This is our last Lasses Lunchtime Lecture of the semester, but we will be back in the spring with a whole slate of really great presentations. So please make sure to join us again in the spring. Our presenter for today needs no introduction, literally.
Clase para mañana de las 5, mañana de 9 a 10.
The introduction, but I'm really just going to hand this over to Associate Director of Lasses, Alberto Vargas, to share with us his work. So take it over and I'm going to figure out what's going on with this.
Well, welcome. As this is a class, also this is a course. Usually the last session of the course, we devoted that to have a meeting with the students or talk about the papers, compare notes, what happened in the semester. But we decided to make it a little more extensive. But for the students, make sure that I'm going to read all your essays. And don't forget to turn on your evaluations with suggestions for next year. Next spring is going to be in charge of Professor McKenna. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of the program, but to start, step back a little bit and a longer history, what I call the millennia before UW-Madison. It's just to acknowledge that we are in Hotshot land. And I encourage you to take the First Nations landscape, cultural landscape of campus. I'll assure you that you won't see the campus with the same eyes after you take this tour. And it's our common, like a shared future. That's sort of the spirit of what I wanted to convey down. So to start,
That's fine. I can do that.
Well, first one is like, why Wisconsin? Why Wisconsin had a strong program in Latin American studies? If we were very far from the border, this was not New Spain or was not the territory of the southern of the United States. So why was it? So, well, let's start with this sort of the early encounters. There's a gentleman on the left, a gentleman on the right. One is from Wisconsin, another one is from a large Latin American country. So I'll ask you to take your guess who's who, but to save time, let me just give you the Charles Van Hise, president of UW from 1903 to 1918. And this is Joaquim Nabuco, the Brazilian ambassador to the United States from 1905 to 1910. That's a long time ago, when there was like some interaction between the countries. So Joaquim Nabuco was a statesman, first ambassador of Brazil to the US, as I said, supported of Pan-Americanism and anti-slavery. He was invited to give the commencement speech in 1909 here with his paper, The Share of America in Civilization, but he was not able to deliver it because he got ill and he passed away not short after. But President Van Hise read his speech. 100 years after, to celebrate the 100 years of this encounter, it's 1909, in 2009, Professor Severino Albuquerque, he worked really hard to convene a gathering here in Madison. And he invited the family of Joaquim Nabuco. They came here and they spent a lot of time in the library reading the correspondence between Joaquim Nabuco and Vargas and others at UW. It was really great to have that event. And out of that event, Vivi Nabuco, Joaquim Nabuco's granddaughter, gave a gift to the university to encourage students to learn about Brazil. There was an annual contest that undergrads and grads submitted an essay, and there was an evaluation committee, and they picked a winner. So we supported 7 undergraduates and 12 graduate students. The award was a round trip to Brazil. So we had all these students going back and forth, and they visited with Ms. Nabuco. That was a really, really good program to foster this learning about Brazil. Historian, Professor Al McCoy, corrected me and said, well, there was someone else before. Why don't you take a look at Paul Reich? Was he the first Latin Americanist from Wisconsin? He was born in Milwaukee. He was a lawyer, professor, author, diplomat. He studied with Frederick Jackson Turner. He worked a lot on the borders. Reich got his PhD in 1898. He happened to travel also to Brazil, to the Pan American Congresses in 1906 and 1909 in Rio. And we think that that's probably when the connection was made with Nabucco. He went with Eli Horut, the Secretary of War under Teddy Roosevelt, also statesman, very, very important in the foreign US policy. And he ended up being the ambassador to China from 1913 until his death. But he wrote quite a bit about Latin America. So that is another part of the story to sort of get that early connection. Now, a few years later, in the 1930s, we had the visit of scholars from Spain, specifically Solalinde, Antonio Garcia Solalinde. He came to Wisconsin, spent 13 years here in Wisconsin, and he founded a school. Realize that I'm also telling you the story of the Spanish and Portuguese department, but we got along pretty well with them, with a partnership. He founded the Seminary on Medieval Studies, and one of his students, Lloyd Kasten, also from Wisconsin, he was born in Watertown. He got his PhD in 1931. He succeeded Solalinde as being the director of the Seminary in Medieval Spanish Studies, but he expanded. He also was interested in Portugal and learning Portuguese. He learned Portuguese. He spoke many other languages. He spoke, of course, German, his native language, Latin, the others. He was a scholar. And so it's interesting also like his time here in Madison, he worked with Professor Eduardo Nil Silva, and the two of them author textbooks to learn Spanish. Those textbooks become very widely used all over the US, and out of the proceeds of that, Eduardo Nil Silva also gave a gift to the university for Chilean studies, to attract Chilean studies. So if we look at the evolution from these early on days, by the 1950s, there were already two very solid streams here at UW. One was the Luso-Brazilian Studies Center, and NDEA stands for National Defense Education Act. That's sort of the origin before Title VI. the idea was to train scholars in the US to learn about Latin America and many other parts of the world as well, but in this case, about Latin America. And UW-Madison became the locus to train people to learn Portuguese. That was, and then the other one was the Latin American Center, focused on Spanish, a little later in 1962. So UW-Madison, one of the first 6 Title VI centers in the US. There was also support at that time from the Ford Foundation and from USAID that gave a lot of strength to all the activities related to Latin America here on campus. So the evolution of our program started with these two centers, but then in 1975, they were consolidated into what was called the Ibero-American Studies Program. Actually, if you go to the library, it's the Ibero-American Studies Collection, not the Latin American collection. And then in 1990, it switched. Latin America went first, and Iberian came after, sort of maybe to show the emphasis of the activities and what was happening in the world at that time. And finally, in 2000, the CE was put into the center to add the Caribbean, Latin American, Caribbean, and Iberian studies, thanks to one of the directors, Professor Francisco Scarano. So out of that, I think it was before, that's fine. I'm just showing you here the directors of the program or the center since it was founded. And I want to just you to see the diversity of disciplines and how the program was set up to foster collaboration and learning about the area. The one with asterisk is when the name was changed. These are the directors in the more recent time. I came here in 2005 when Professor Guido Podestá was director, and then I worked with Professor Bill Villad, with Francisco Scarano again, with Hernando Rojas, Cata Bailing, and now with Cata. I'm very thankful, and it was really great to work with all of them. Very glad to have had that opportunity. So this is a picture of the directors in 2006 when we had one of our open houses at that time. And you can see that from left to right, Professor Albuquerque, Steve Stern, Guido Podestá, Francisco Scarano, Alda Blanco, and Joe Tom. So that was a really nice event at that time, get together all the directors to sort of get into the new phase of LASIS. Now, on top of this, we had gifts to really consolidate the program. And you apply to students specifically, or sometimes faculty too, to grants from the NAVE Fund or from the Tinker Fund. So this is the story of how these endowments came about. Starting in 1976 by Cyril W. Nave, who was also a UW alum. Then the Tinker Visiting Professorship established in 1977. UW-Madison is one of the 5 universities in the US with this endowment to bring professors from Latin America to teach for 1 semester or 1 year. Then we have the Tinker Field Research Grants since 1979. And now we are in what is called the Field Research Collaborative in a 5-year cycle that's 15 universities that get together to fund students to go to the field. But there's an attempt so the students can connect with each other and see what others are doing at other universities. So it was the Tinker Foundation has taken a step up to really foster the spirit of collaboration. Helen Firstbrook Franklin was also a UW alum in journalism, and he left also another endowment. It's a scholarship to attract students to UW-Madison to study Latin America, and also I think the journalism department, they also have part of the endowment. Since 1975, our center, and NRC stands for National Research Center, we've had an in consortium with the University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee. We've had this grant from the federal government, from the Department of Education, to foster learning foreign languages and what they call area studies. I'll say a little bit more about that. Then I mentioned already Neil Silva and the scholarship since 2010 to attract Chilean studies. So far, I think in the history of the program, we've attracted about 32 students from Chile to come to Madison to get their graduate program, or also sometimes like special students for one semester at their undergraduate. The Joaquim Nabuco Award, I already mentioned that. And most recently, the Paul Schneider Scholarship, also an alum who just gave a gift. He's still alive, and we're very thankful and very happy that he decided to do that for our program. This is to attract students to LACIS, to the Latin American Studies Program, and right now, several of the recipients are here in the room. So we also just a couple words about teaching indigenous languages. We teach Portuguese, of course, I mentioned, but Portuguese is more well known. There's a whole department. But we also teach Yucatec, Maya, and Quechua. Our Quechua professor, Armando Muyolema, who has been teaching since 2002, was recently elected the rector of the University Mount Iwasi in Ecuador. He's still overseeing the teaching of Quechua, and he has a language institute in his university that we think is going to consolidate more the excellence in teaching of Quechua. And we collaborate with the Andes and Amazon Field School to send students in the summer for intensive training in Quechua as well. Jessica Hurley, that's our instructor for Yucatec Maya since 2009. And we also collaborate with the University of North Carolina to send students to the Yucatec Maya Institute in Mexico. More recently, in our last Title VI application, we proposed to expand with a pilot project to see if there was interest in learning Mazatec, language in the mountains of Oaxaca in Mexico. We did that. It was a webinar, 5-session. It was only in Spanish. And we did that in collaboration with CIESAS, that's the Center for Higher Studies in Social Anthropology in Mexico, with a linguist from the Mazatec region, Eloy Garcia. We didn't know if it was going to work out. We just put the announcement, and the next day we had 35 registrants. A lot of them from Mexico, from this. So there was a pilot. We don't know if it's going to be feasible to continue with that, but we are very happy that we were able to do that. I'll tell you a little bit about the history of the program itself, but now, why did I come to UW? That's when we were working in DC with my wife, Lori, who I owe her so much. We were looking for graduate programs, and we were applying to universities that needed certain characteristics. And these are the ones that were attractive to me. First one, I already mentioned, the Ibero-American Studies. That's the name of the program when we came here. I also wanted to have a strong environmental studies program. That was before it was called Gaylord Nelson. There was the environmental studies program. The Land Tenure Center. The Land Tenure Center is famous worldwide. University of Wisconsin is known in the world because of the Land Tenure Center. And also an ag program. The history of the Land Tenure Center is that I came to visit here get to know the campus, and I was working here and walking in the medical sciences building. And I see an office with a giant poster of Emiliano Zapata. And I say, oh, I got to talk to this guy. And that was very important. And since then, Professor David Stafford, since then we became colleagues and friends and worked in many, many projects. And the Land Tenure Center was also one of my home while I was here. And most recently, we've had scholars coming to UW-Madison to work in the archives. We have Carolina Ormaza from Germany and Mario Prosopo from Italy that are coming to Madison to look at this wealth of information. And that's a project that I think it needs some attention to curate and to maintain the archives in good shape. But that was very important. So this sort of got me to UW-Madison. And it was logical that I was coming from my bachelor's in agronomy from the Tecnológico de Monterrey in Querétaro. I work in ag industry and government in the central part of Mexico. I got my master's in Texas A&M, working in the US-Mexico border when it was calm and peaceful. And I also had the privilege of working for 5 years in Yucatan, in the state of Quintana Roo, in an eco-development center that was way ahead of its time. It was the formation of the state of Quintana Roo. It was a territory, it was not even a state. And Cancun was just proposed as a project, as a tourist project. And we had like a dream. Well, this is the time we're gonna do it right. We tried our best. Afterwards, I worked in Washington, D.C. for 5 years in global environmental NGOs. And then that's when we came to Madison to do our PhD. So I was bringing all this background. After finishing my PhD, I got to do something. I had to stay in my family. I had to, so I got a job with the state of Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Coastal Management Program in the Department of Administration. Now that was also a program to channel federal funds, go to the state and then to the local governments to take care of the shorelines of the Great Lakes in Wisconsin, 1,000 miles. So it was a wonderful experience. I had a chance to see Wisconsin from Superior to Kenosha, and I even know how to say Sheboygan. So I was working there when I got a call from Professor Gates Seidman and then Director Guido Podestá telling me that there was a vacancy and that I was interested in applying. And of course, I did it immediately. And say, by the way, you have to write a proposal, but it's okay. You'll get a gist of that when you get to that. So then I'll tell you a little bit about the why I came here, why the program, and now how. I'll tell you a little bit about how we work. And for me, LAS is we work in aligning ideas and resources to support research for students and faculty, enhance teaching, and engage the community. And I put ideas in bold because that's how we work. I mean, the ideas come from many of you, from faculty, from students. So we just facilitate that and make it real, make it work. But that's sort of, for me, how I think we work. Now, part of my responsibility was to teach, and I'm just showing you here some of the influences for my teaching. When I came here, even before I came here, I was already involved in some readings and some materials of what is called integral approach or integral theory. There was a journal by Sony Press and a series that they've been discontinued, but they had an influence. One of them was this book, Integral Ecology, written by a philosopher and ecologist. This is book. I have a chapter in that book about my teaching philosophy at UW. And I also learned a lot about what was called institutionalism or institutional economics at UW-Madison in the legacy on in the line of John R. Commons. If you go to campus, different places, you see the John R. Commons room. There's one in the faculty club. There's another one right here in social sciences. John R. Commons spent here several years in Wisconsin, and he was credited with planting the seed for what later became the Wisconsin idea. So I was trained here. Professor Dan Bromley was also a mentor to me. He was one of the professors who taught institutionalism until recently. Out of all that came some offshoots, for example, in the Office of Human Resources Development, professional training program, the journey of facilitation and collaboration with colleagues, Harry Webney Berman, Darren Harris, Steve Davis. And if you talk with people in the administration, the academic staff across campus, many of them have taken this journey of facilitation and collaboration that was founded on some of these ideas. Some of these fellows here, you might recognize that Abraham Maslow, who did his bachelor, master's, and PhD here in Madison. By the way, he never drew the pyramid, but he's a big influence. Karen O'Brien, we overlap in high school, in graduate school here she was in geography. She's a professor at University of Oslo. She was one of the winners of the 2007 Nobel Prize with Al Gore for her work in climate change. And Elinor Ostrom, that was also a big influence on me, for my teaching and my career. I did my dissertation based on her work. She was very generous person. May she rest in peace. She was the Nobel Prize in economics in 2009. And so this is sort of some of the sources that influenced my teaching. And these are the courses that I taught. I started teaching for the international studies in the global cultures course on Latin America. Before LASIS had the timetable status, once we have the timetable status, we shifted to current issues in Latin America. And so you can see has been teaching almost concurrently. And actually this LASIS 440 is like a continuation of that. I had my seminar on sustainable development and integral perspective with the Nelson Institute that I taught it from 2006 to 2023. When I started, I got a call from Professor Stan Temple from Forest and Wildlife Ecology, and he said, Alberto, you're coming to UW-Madison, you have to teach. There's a course that nobody wants to teach. It's sustainable development, and it's going to be canceled if you don't take it. I mean, you want to take it. I said, sure, why not? I'll take it. So it was a really great experience. And I taught that course all the way until last year. 10 years ago, it became one of the electives for the professional masters in environmental conservation in the Nelson Institute, and there was always a few students interested in Latin America. So that was a really, really great experience for me to teach that seminar. I had a chance to teach the big course, the Introduction to Latin America, with more than 100 students and TAs and that. So that was a lot of work, but a lot of fun, and I learned a lot from teaching that course. And then I also taught for the international learning community, smaller groups in the residence houses, just people interested in Latin America. So these are the courses that I developed. And these are other courses that I co-taught with faculty in other departments. For example, organic agriculture in Costa Rica with Professor Jim Ninhus from horticulture. And more recently, Claudia Calderon is continuing with that trajectory. People and culture of El Salvador. We had for several years, we thought it was a collaboration with Edgewood College. It was a year-long course, 2 semesters with 10 days in El Salvador. We had 1 week here, 1 week in Edgewood, sort of blended the group of students, and then had the experience of visiting El Salvador. I went to El Salvador, it was a really transformative experience. It was really great. But that was discontinued with some people retire and change. The seminar on the indigeneity offered in 2017, I'll mention a little bit about that later on. And this seminar on integral ecology, you saw the cover of the book, Integral Ecology. I was part of the first offering of this seminar with Professor Doug Reinemann, who was the chair of biological systems engineering, and he's an associate dean in CALS. So he taught this seminar for several years, and the syllabus was very simple. Just read the book. It's like 800-page book, 1 chapter every week. So that was really great experience also to teach that seminar. So now I'll talk a little bit about advising, because that was also part of my responsibilities. We're proud of all of our students. I did an estimate now of how many committees I've been in my last 20 years. I counted 62 committees, PhDs, masters, and some professional master students. These are the ones that just happened to graduate this year. I don't know why everybody was sort of graduating in this year, but Oyuki Castillo got her PhD in the Spanish department. Annie Ortiz from the School of Human Ecology. The title is a little obscure. You can see 5-MeO-DMT as a mental health tool. I'll say a little bit more about this later on. Álvaro Cabrera from Chile, one of the recipients of the Neil Silva. And Nicole Eckhart from Geography, who worked in payment for ecosystem services in Ecuador. Then we had 2 students that are sort of special because they work in the same area that I did my dissertation on. Not I had anything to do with that. They found their own projects, but it just happened that they work in that region. Tatiana Maeda from in the Nelson Institute. She worked in a cutting-edge project on bioacoustics, using sounds to estimate biodiversity in the forest. And Sophia Winkler-Shore, also from the Nelson Institute, she worked in this agroforestry project. It's called Sembrando Vida, one of the pet projects from the last administration in Mexico. She was one of the very few independent evaluators or people doing research on this project. So that was really great to work with the 2 of them. And last week, Connor Bunting, defending his master's in this program that we have, the dual LASIS JD with the law school, with a program, very interesting on jurisprudence in Brazil, the cooptation of the judicial system by Bolsonaro, really interesting, really timely too. And we were not notified of another graduate, and I want to mention special mention to her, Mindy Navarro, who is graduating from with a bachelor's in LASIS in our undergrad program. So congratulations, Mindy. So we had to do that. All right. So then, if we look at concentric circles like LASIS, we have our own students. And then if we expand, we can see students in other departments that work in Latin America. Then we work with some reorganizations of the area studies. We had the creation of the IRIS, the Institute for Regional and International Studies, and other programs like Study Abroad, international academics programs, internships, awards, the library, collaboration with the library, language program office, and the summer institutes. So it's difficult to see like where LASIS ends and where the whole structure. And not only that, we, the National Research Centers, we're 7 federally funded centers here in Madison, the largest number in the US, and that is really great. And all our peers, the associate directors, we work together, try to share resources and that. So that's a very important part of our partnerships. We had other examples like the Health Sciences Field School in Ecuador, that Professor Kiefer has taken some students there. The Global Health Institute and the One Health program in Colombia. And we had postdocs. Olga Lucia Chaparro is doing a very interesting series of research in Colombia, particularly with the displacement of the Embera people in Medellin and in Bogota. Then we had collaboration also with CALS Global, and the Dairy Science in Mexico field course that I think is another year that is going to be offered. With the Global Legal Studies too, we've done a lot of joint programs. We work with the Chicano and the Latino Studies program on the 3rd floor. We do a lot of work together. The Cinematheque, we have a solid collaboration with the Cinematheque with our Festival de Cine every year. And the Nelson Institute, of course, that I mentioned, we have several labs that we collaborate with. One is with Professor Holly Gibbs. Partnerships beyond campus, if we go beyond them, we can engage with, for example, the Consortium for Latin American Studies program that does are in different universities, Latin American Studies programs. We get together, we share resources, we support junior faculty, we promote languages. It's a really great organization, and I was president of the organization for a couple of years. Then LASA, the largest like academic organization in the US and also in Latin America and in Europe, is global. And we have annual meetings, and it's a very important and almost like an obligated meeting to go to sort of meet with other colleagues. Universidad de Guadalajara, that's another one of our main collaborations. And forgive me, but it's going to be impossible to just describe what this fellow, Eduardo Santana Castellon, does, even in 1 hour lecture. But he got his bachelor's, master's, and PhD here in Madison. And he has been leading efforts at the Universidad de Guadalajara for many years, working in really exciting projects, the Biosphere Reserve of Manatlan, the cleanup of the Ayuquila River, the intermunicipal sort of conference to manage the watersheds in Jalisco, and more recently, the Museum of Environmental Sciences in Guadalajara, and also the International Book Fair that is happening. I'll just refer to you, there are 3 chapters in Wisconsin in the world that describe this particular partnership with Guadalajara. It's one of our top priorities. We have an agreement with the University of Utah. It's very challenging to teach indigenous languages and what they call less commonly taught languages, because there are very few students that work. So in an effort to expand the audience, we had a collaboration with Utah to have their students receive our courses. So they just connect them with Zoom and virtual technology that is possible. So that has really enriched a lot the teaching of these languages. There was another collaboration that we started with a small university in Hidalgo, in Mexico, with a geopark that was with the geosciences department. We had a student from Chile who did her graduate program in geology. And this is basically, it's called the Geopark Comarca Minera, really fascinating place in Hidalgo. We don't know what the future of that collaboration is gonna be because there have been some stuff changes. So, but the site is really worth visiting. It's really, really great. And we were very happy to have the chance to work with them. And we received here the leaders of that project, Eduardo Garcia Alonso, who gave a couple talks here. So, yeah. There's another line of collaboration that we were so, I would say, lucky, or I don't know, that Madison was the locus of many community organizations interested in Latin America. For example, CALA, the Community Action in Latin America, if you look at the dates, in the 70s, that was the time where the region was, really complicated series of dictatorships and civil wars and problems. So we had a very active engagement of the community. There was another one that I didn't put there. That was the Midwest Association for Latin American Studies. And the acronym is MALAS. And someone had the idea to issue a bulletin called Malas Noticias. So some things never change, and then sort of the sister cities with the city of Madison. Madison, Camagüey, in Cuba. I had a chance to visit Cuba with part of the sister city. That was a really great experience, and it's very active still. Madison Aracatao Sister City Project in El Salvador. That's very active too. And there is also like a U.S. organization of solidarity with El Salvador. I would say that this association was instrumental in sort of putting pressure to end the civil wars in Central America. Madison Tepatitlan, sister city, is also in Jalisco. This other one, Wisconsin Capital for Community Needs. They kept the acronym. Originally was Wisconsin Coordinating Council in Nicaragua, but when things changed in Nicaragua, they forgot about Nicaragua, and it's just like a microfinance group, but they're very good. And the Madison Cusco is the most recent one. And this was very useful because we used to send our students to these organizations to do internships. That was really great. At one point, we had like a resource fair. We had tables here with representatives from all the organizations, and we brought our students, and they could hear 5 minutes of description, and then they can rotate on the tables and see what they wanted to do. So it was really good. Maybe we can do that again. That was really good. So I mean, this is giving you another area of collaboration that it just happened to be here in Madison. Other projects that I led, the Brazil initiative was very important when I started, and we formed a Brazil-US network with representatives from universities in the US in Brazil to work on environmental issues. With biosphere reserves, with Professor Michael Adams, there was courses and meetings about biosphere reserves in Spain, but also working in many places in Latin America. Climate change in the Amazon with the Universidad Nacional de Colombia in Leticia, with Professor Germán Palacio. Right now, we're sending students to that part of the Amazon. Liz Berghauser, who's here, has been there, and she's doing research there too. Another project, Laguna Bacalar, with Universidad de Wisconsin in Milwaukee, was a really fascinating project to pristine, very beautiful lagoon in southern Quintana Roo, with the presence of stromatolites that are these fossils from bacteria from way back millions of years ago. That's one of the largest concentration of stromatolites in the world. And it just happened to be very fragile ecosystem, and it's under heavy risk and threat. So there were some experts at UW-Milwaukee in the freshwater center, and we've been doing work with them. It's still ongoing, although I don't know if there's another group of students going because Jerry Caster retired. Another project that we're very proud of is our collaboration with the College of Menominee Nation. It started in 2007 when I was teaching my seminar. Mike Dockery, he was a student in my seminar. He was the liaison between the Forest Service and the Menominee tribal enterprises there. And when I was talking about sustainability and all these things and Washington and NGOs, he said, well, let me give you another perspective that might find it interesting. There's this, the Menominee people have been doing that, what you're talking about, with different angle. I said, oh, that's great. Well, so we went to visit the college. We took our indigenous languages instructors to there, to Menominee. So we already had, and the Sustainable Development Institute in the college, that was sort of the branch of the college that we did a lot of work with. So it just happened at that time that Professor Paul Robbins from the Nelson Institute convened a gathering here in Madison to have like a 2-day workshop to develop a shared agenda with the tribes of Wisconsin. The 11 tribes were invited officially. 2015, the last time that the tribes were invited officially, all of them, to Wisconsin was in 1915. So it takes a lot of time, it took a lot of time, but there's a lot of progress. Things are going really well now. And the UW Native Nations Work Group was founded, and I was appointed as representative with Marianne Berber. We were representatives of the International Division in that work group. The group is still meeting, still important. So we have been partners with the College of the Menominee Nation for the past 3 Title VI cycles. I mentioned already the seminar on indigeneity that we did with Reynaldo Morales, that I have to be credit to. He got his PhD here too. He was very helpful with this project. And I want to mention also, I want to point out to Chris Caldwell, the president of the college, who just defended his PhD dissertation a couple of weeks ago here in the Nelson Institute. That's great. And this is the icon of the Menominee model for sustainability. So I'm running out of time, but there's another couple of things that I want to share with you. Some what I call emergent field. This fellow just got me involved and got Lassis involved in a new area of studies that was sort of unexpected. It's in Silus alvarius, the buffalo toad, or the Sonoran desert toad, is endemic of northern Mexico, lives most of its life buried in burrows under the sand to escape the heat, and in the rainy season comes out to eat and mate. This fellow, you can notice the glands in his body. The glands of the toad secrete psychoactive substance that is very potent, one of the most potent psychoactive substances. And so it was just happening at that time. I wrote this piece. It's called Latin American Studies Meet Psychedelic Studies. It was published in the Lassis Review. You can look at it. It's in the #1 issue. Dr. Annie Ortiz finished her PhD in the School of Human Ecology, working on this particular substance and the potential for mental health alleviation. And the tests are still ongoing. The unfortunate thing is that there was a false narrative of someone who discovered this and started to promote the use of this substance. And the poor toad is being used to source the whole globe. This is global. It's used in Europe, in Australia, New Zealand, everywhere. So that is something that is very, very concerning. Of course, we are working with others in these campaigns of leave the toad alone. There is a synthetic version of the substance that could be used. We're also collaborating with the National Autonomous University in Mexico with Georgina Santos. She's a herpetologist who's doing a population study of the toad to generate the information to see how threatened is the species to provide some kind of protection, because right now it's unregulated, there's no protection. So that's a very important project that we're working on. So I was, again, just out of this conversation, I became sort of one of the founding members of the Transdisciplinary Center for Research on Psychoactive Substances here on campus, housed in the School of Pharmacy, but with participation of many other departments. Transdisciplinary, it shows the interest in going beyond the technical, clinical part of the research. And UW-Madison, I would say, is sort of in the leading edge of having social sciences and the humanities in this type of center, with Professor Lucas Reichert from the School of Pharmacy, a historian, and many others. So I was also teach for the Masters in Pharmaceutical Psychoactive Investigation, just one class, but I put together a lecture on this historical relation between the origin of many of these substances and what is happening right now in what is called the psychedelic renaissance here in the US. We collaborate with the Usora Institute as the nonprofit of the Promega Corporation in Fitchburg. And we'll put together annual panels at LASA on psychedelics for the last 5 years with some colleagues from other universities. There is an ongoing dialogue because there's an unresolved question on like, what should be the relationship between these custodians of the original substances, particularly the mushrooms for psilocybin, ayahuasca in South America, peyote also in the desert. Ayahuasca, for example, there are like 40,000 plant species in the Amazon. It just happened that if you mix 2 of them, you have the release of these psychoactive substances. How did it happen? So I would say, like in the relationship between humans and the natural world, we have some plants that nourish you, others that kill you, don't do it again, and also that they can heal you physically and spiritually. So, for example, like tomorrow, the Center Culture, History, and Environment. It's a program here at UW. We're hosting people from the Andes and from Yucatan and from the Cochong to talk about this understanding the sacred way of our ancestors. Tomorrow is just happened last week. There was this symposium on sacred mushrooms and psilocybin. It was all in Spanish and Portuguese. What I'm trying to show you is that there is a vibrant discussion of this topic beyond US. There is the US universities slowly are getting into this after 30 or 40 years of halting in all this research since the 1970s were the world of wild drugs. Okay, just a few more. Another project that is just we developed that was a collaboration with the library, with special collections. Laura Martin, our librarian, called our attention. She said, well, there's a manuscript that is for sale. Somebody's putting out for sale. Are you interested in getting it? So we got it. This happened to be a very important document from 1619 by this person, Juan de Salcedo, that was called to give his opinion on what to do about the peyote. 1 year before the Spanish edict prohibiting the use of peyote in all Spain. The edict from 1620 is in Brown Library. You can consult that. But this one, we have it here. And we are sort of hosting experts like Osiri Gonzalez, who's a postdoc in the Harvard Divinity School, Nidia Alvera, who is she's in the Netherlands in the Rodwood Center for Culture and History, and Melissa Frost from the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, and others that are coming to Madison to do research on this topic, including some of the PPI students in the School of Pharmacy that are using these for their projects. So now, just to close, what I see is like what is coming 2025 and beyond. Of course, we have the firm direction of Professor McKinnon and Sarah Rip to keep the project going with the support of the international division that we're very thankful to. And the IRIS structure, again, where the program ends and where the whole enterprise goes, it's a fluid and very constructive, very effective. We have a phenomenal strength of our affiliated faculty, we're 100, and we have solid partnerships in campus and beyond. And just to conclude, how do I see? Because this was also like a personal account. For me, these 20 years have been sort of the most meaningful and rewarding experience of my career, because I was able to bring all the experience that I had before and use it for teaching with passion, to bridge. I was a bridge and a connector, and in UW and beyond, build relationships and partnerships to maintain and enhance research and teaching about the region, and also to contribute from Wisconsin. I'm an immigrant from Mexico, from Latin America, that I didn't expect to be based in the US at one point. I mean, it just happened. But this is a way sort of to contribute from here, to give back to the region, to sort of multiply the impact of our colleagues there, and at the same time, to enrich the campus and what we do here. So with that, I thank you for your attention. And I don't know if we have time for one or two questions, but thank you very much.
Folks, we have time for one or two questions. So I open the floor to you. If you have to leave before we can break up, feel free. But yeah, questions, comments for Professor Vargas. Yeah.
Alia.
Question.
Yeah.
You. I took one of my name's Aaliyah McCord. I'm the Associate Director of the African Studies Program. So Alberto's peer solution. And I took your sustainability course, I think in like 2010, maybe or 2009. It was a great course, and I still remember it. And I also wanted to thank you for just being an amazing mentor when I first started this position in 2016 too. So thank you.
Thank you, Alia. David.
Yeah, I'm David Fields. I'm the Associate Director of the Center for East Asian Studies. Alberto was my advisor in a previous life when I was doing an MA in LASIS. And I don't have a question either. I have a comment. Similar to what Leah just said, not only did I take your sustainable development class and you were my MA advisor, but you were also my mentor when I got this position in 2019. But even before that, I feel like when I first came into the university, you were a model for me, because I would pitch you a crazy idea. Like, I'm a LASIS student, but I want to take Korean. And everyone else who I pitched these ideas to said, no, you can't do that. And Alberto, by default, you always said, yes, let's see how we can make this work. And I know over the last 5 years when I've been in this position, when people come to me with ideas, I tried to channel my inner Alberto and say, yes, how can we do this? Not, no, we can't do it for this reason, but how can we make this work and how we can think creatively? So I'm so grateful for your example in that way.
Thank you.
That's common, and then we'll break.
No question, but then my journey at UW has been quite a long one. I took some therapy. Yeah, so I met Profe Vargas kind of by accident and by necessity. And then from there, we just developed a very dope relationship. You guys mentored me from, academic life, professional life, but also personal life. And that has meant a lot. There will be times where I was going through something and I'll be like, Profe, can we go for a walk? And then you will see us there walking in the middle of the fall, just for decades or in the summer. So it just, I just feel really grateful to have been able to gain so much wisdom, experience. I wish I could give you more words, but I feel like they're not enough.
Thank you.
Well, Professor Vargas will be with us for a few more months, so do not despair. This is not the last time you will see Alberto around the halls of Ingram Hall, and we'll probably have a celebration mid-March, perhaps. So be on the lookout for that as we think about honoring just everything you've done for Lassus and the University of Wisconsin, and just for all of our lives as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hopefully we'll see you again at one of the Lassus lunchtime lectures. And thanks everyone that joined on Zoom. We'll see you later. Nos vemos pronto.